All right, so I am here with my friend. I don't want to say mentee. He's just my friend and my brother. He's my family. Sam Lee. I, for someone who's a writer, um, I don't have the words. I don't think we.
Wow.
I don't think we can adequately document and
Mm,
express everything, everything. Especially the small moments that meant everything, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Um, and so Sam Lee is here with me. And, to start us off, again, the only requirement I have for people getting interviews to wear their favorite shirt, sweatshirt, hoodie. What do you have on, Sam?
I'm repping my alma mater, University of California, Irvine, and I gifted Robert a hoodie from there because it's just like a little token of my appreciations for all that he had done, uh, and still continues to do to get me going through life. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I appreciate it, Sam. I'm proud of you, dude. And I have a glimpse, and you allow me to be a witness. Just you making it to UCI,
Mm,
the wandering, and it wasn't much long. You were really disciplined, and you made it through. But uh, yeah, when we look at our peers and uh, our peers didn't find the proper railings to
hmm.
go, but you've made it, man, and you're doing you're doing crazy things as in good. And so to start off from there, you know what? Let the world know what you're passionate about, man.
My passion, how do I distill it into a couple of sentences, is to take care of the mental health, especially amongst the young adults and adolescents.
So
So yeah.
how'd you because a lot of folks um they're trying to figure out what passion is. Passion is such an abstract term. So
Mhm.
how'd you arrive to the space that you're at? And you can use as much time as you want. So there's no time limit, man.
Okay. Um, Honestly, I would say I arrived at my passion pretty quickly, relative to a lot of my other peers.
Hmm.
Because at first I wanted to pursue acting, theater, because my mom did
That's right. Yeah.
acting in Korea, and I remember I was like, what, 3, 4 years old at times, like, sitting in the audience,
Hmm.
sometimes crying because, I was like, that's not my mom. Like, I don't know who that is, but that is her. And, after we came here, I even saw her like directing, um, a play, right? You were in the Rob.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
you
was.
played Jesus Christ. um Honestly, that did serve as one of my core memories, and I really wanted to
Mm,
pursue acting. And Rob, you helped me like go through like exactly what it takes,
mm,
letting me
yeah.
read all those Shakespeare books,
Mm,
Zoot Suit and all those things. um and then I don't want to say unfortunately, but surprisingly it came all crashing down um in junior year, at the start of junior year in high school.
hmm,
And for, a lot of students who are in, I guess, like, affluent and well-developed communities,
yeah.
junior year is like arguably the most important year of
Mm.
your high school career, right? Because that's where you
Oh,
start
where'd
taking
you go
all.
to high school?
I went to high school in Homestead High School
Mm,
in Cupertino. Yeah. So, you know, junior year, start of it, I was enrolled in all these APs, and then boom, I got hit with depression. And it
mm,
was over the span of, I don't know, I want to say like 2 months. I went from being this jolly, hyperactive,
mm,
outgoing kid to, you know, a shell of my former self,
mm,
like an
yeah.
abandoned snail shell. That's like really
Mm,
how I felt.
yeah.
And um, it all, I think it all stemmed from a question I asked myself is like, if no person can truly relate to one another,
Mm.
doesn't that mean we're all alone in this world?
Yeah.
And somehow that thought like made me spiral, and I fell into deep depression. I put myself into a mental hospital because I was very suicidal. Um, but then after coming out of it, I realized like, I feel like this is almost like a calling,
Yeah.
right? I wanted, well, actually, the calling stemmed from, man, there is nothing in terms of mental health support
Mm.
in the Bay Area. And that led me in like a little rabbit hole where I found like, man, there's no mental health support anywhere,
Mm.
right? The fact that I had
Yeah.
to figure out, advocate for myself to get therapy, put myself into a mental hospital, just shows that like what, at least in Korean culture, or
Yeah.
yeah, in Korean
Yeah.
culture,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah. Yeah.
no
Yeah.
such thing as mental health.
Yeah.
And it was only through the small tidbits of information I was able to find in America, right? Or just California for that matter,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, where I was able to like realize, oh, dang, there is a gap in in this area, in this
Mhm.
life where I feel like I can contribute something to it. So that's where I kind of went into it. I loved learning about it. Like that's the thing. Um, like learning about psychology
Yeah.
because I found the utility of it.
And that's your
Re-
declared major. That was your declared
hmm
major. Yeah.
So that's like why like I fell back in love with learning
Mm.
because as soon as like, late middle school, pretty much up until junior year, I was only learning for the sake of grades,
Mm.
right? Not learning for the sake of learning.
Yeah.
So that was already a sign. And um, you know, actually working in the field of mental health, where I was a program manager for a youth program, where I was a residential counselor for um, basically a group home.
Yeah.
I think they call it short-term temporary residential something. Um, and now I'm working with families, helping them get connected to mental health resources, teaching them using parent management techniques for a whole host of mental health issues, along with, family issues. It like every experience, no matter how
Mm.
stressful or how easy it is, um, has affirmed my, passion. Like
Yeah.
this is where I need to be, but also where I want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so what is the field that you're in now called? Is there a technical? Is there an?
So I would say, I mean, the field, there is no like distinct field.
Mhm.
I mean, it's basically social work.
Oh, okay.
And basically my job calls for me to work with parents
Mm.
where their kids have gone through, or yeah, the kids are like, going to school. They're dealing with a lot of mental health disorders, ADHD, depression.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have been suicidal.
Mm.
I've even dealt with a youth who has psychosis.
Yeah.
Um, and along with that, you couple that in with like the family going through a lot of financial issues because the area that I work in Las Vegas,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, there's it's really poor
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and and like I mentioned I mentioned this to you before, Rob, but like I realized like working out here made me really appreciative, and it helped open my eyes to how privileged it is
Yeah.
I was to have grown up in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Um, because kids they don't care about the SAT, they don't care about A's.
Mm. Yeah.
Parents are happy with if their kid gets C's,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. They're just happy if they pass,
Yeah.
you know. And along with that, like I, deal with kids getting suspended, getting RPC, they getting expelled. At the same time, parents like they have to find another job besides just, like door dashing or Uber eating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So So yeah, that's basically what I do at my current job right now.
So, I mean, and you can share with the audience your accolades. You finished like top in the class, right? In your major. I mean, but give us the official title. What was it? Because I got the percentage wrong. So at least let it be recorded in the annals of history. Where are you, right, in all psych undergrads when you graduated from UCI?
From UCI, the college, I think I was in the top 5 percentile or something
Mm.
along this line. I think it was top 4 to 6, but yeah, I was
Yeah.
fairly up there.
So then right after that, even though you're quote unquote in social work,
Mhm.
um, what did you originally want to go into? Like, did you want to do a
Um,
PhD research? And so, and you're doing a lot of good right now, but like,
mhm,
how did you go from becoming an academic? Because you have the accolades to even go straight to a PhD program,
mhm.
but then literally someone who is like being, I consider you just a saint, man. So like, how do you go giving up like, well, PhD is probably still in the cards, but like, how do you
Yeah.
go from there to here?
Um, Honestly, it was a factor of honestly, I think the first thing that kind of shifted my trajectory,
Mm.
oops, was COVID.
Uh,
Because
wow,
COVID hit as soon as during my last year, my last 2 quarters ish, or last quarter
that's
of
right.
my
Yeah,
undergraduate.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So that threw everything off the rails. And granted, I was very fortunate because I had to pivot, right? So I couldn't just stay in research. I had to, well, I was graduating,
Yeah.
so I had to work.
Mm.
Um, and while living in California, and all the expenses,
Yeah,
especially
yeah,
rent,
yeah, yeah,
I had to hold down multiple jobs, right? So I mentioned that I was a program manager. I was also a residential counselor,
yeah.
but I was also working in ABA, basically working with kids who are on the autism spectrum.
Mm.
So that was really my first foray into realizing, oh man, yeah, academics is that, but it's like all a foundation, and everything you could be learning in terms of working with clients
Yeah,
um, comes in the workforce.
yeah.
And like I originally wanted to become a psychologist because, I mean, at the time I thought psychologists was really working, in the field, and they
Hmm.
do, and they
Yeah, yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but I didn't fully understand what that position meant and uh, what that road would look like to get there. So, I find a lot of value working with clients in the field. So that's why I chose to stay here. And um, I see myself as, you know, on a timer where I I am gonna more or less like exhaust myself in terms of like, what I can do before I started getting jaded,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
And this is why like this is like a for sure a welcome detour.
yeah, yeah.
But I do eventually go plan to go back to school. I mean, I'm in the process of applying for a master's right now.
Okay.
So yeah.
So outside of COVID, talking about pivoting, outside of COVID, what's a pivotal moment that you say shaped who you are right now?
Mm.
And there's a lot. I know there's a lot
I
that
was about to say
there's a
there's
lot
so
you've
much.
overcome, a lot that you've encountered.
Um, let's see. I guess my first pivotal moment in this journey again was me um get like being diagnosed with depression, and later
Mm.
on actually getting diagnosed with bipolar type 2,
Mm.
um and grappling with that, right? Like kind of not controlling it, but managing my disorder in a way that best serves me
Mm.
so that I could serve other people. So that was one. The other one, I mean, I had a kind of a wild party phase, as you know,
Yeah,
Rob.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, and realizing that like I'm just wasting time,
Mm.
you know, um, and really trying to hone in on like not, doing things for the sake of hanging out with others because that serves me, but, actually sitting down, studying. I remember studying at Happy Donuts multiple times. It's this 24-hour donut shop, um, until the break of dawn,
Yeah.
so that was one. Um, having to having to move out, I mean, is a fairly traditional, like, traditional milestone, but
Yeah.
also I would say, um, really, I mean, it is kind of just like the finances of it,
Mm.
like the finances of like living on your own,
Yeah.
like making me step out of like the as my mentor would call it, the ivory tower of academia. Um, and just like really seeing the world. Oh,
Yeah.
and then of course, I lived in California. I currently live in Vegas now because another pivotal moment was my mom getting diagnosed with breast cancer
Mm,
and me choosing to move out here
yeah.
and, serving a community that I really haven't, that I wasn't initially comfortable with, but I've
Yeah,
grown
yeah,
to
yeah,
become
yeah,
comfortable
yeah,
with.
yeah.
So yeah.
And just for context for the audience doesn't know, like myself, you were raised by a single mom. So again,
Hmm.
not you don't have the expected support system, right? For a
Hmm.
lot of students that, are projected to succeed.
Hmm.
So as much as you've overcome, um, you know, and how you've arrived where you're at as an intellectual, um,
Yeah.
whether it was in high school or it's when you were in undergrad or when you're dealing with people out in the field or dealing with yourself, when you encounter something new, again,
Hmm.
whether it's ideas or people, how how do you deal with a problem? How do you solve it? And if there's multiple facets to it, which I think uh, you and I both, we never try to fall into the either or fallacy, um, because we're just like we dwell on possibilities, but of
Yeah.
course, a lot of people don't do that. How do you determine truth?
Mm. So with truth, I think it is a delicate balance between subjectivity and objectivity because I
Mm,
truly believe that there is an objective truth, in God. Um, and when faced with, you know, faced with having to find truth, I'm always of the stance of getting information as much as possible, right? Um, but that also starts with making sure you have the correct lens,
mm,
right? Understanding like what is your purpose in, facing this problem, right? Is it to directly face the problem? Is it to support someone else, right? Is it to
mm,
teach? Is it to, um, just fix it for them? Because sometimes the situation does call for that. Um, yeah, so having the correct lens, getting as much information as possible,
yeah,
and then weighing the options, because I think that's how you really um, circumvent like the either or fallacy,
yeah,
right? Is because if you really look at what you have and what the information presented to you, like what they are,
hmm,
then you can look at the different options and finding out, you know, what best serves your purpose,
yeah,
right? Now, in terms of like making sure you have the correct lens on, that's a whole nother
yeah, yeah,
conversation,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Amen, amen. I mean, when, um, I'm no stranger to conflict, right?
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
don't back away, but I don't like it. I don't like
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Um, but I want a peaceful outcome. I want someone else to learn from this, including myself. Um, I always come from a point of ignorance and saying, I don't know. I don't know what the other side is thinking. I don't know what the other
Mm,
person is going through. And so what I try to do is invert the questions and try to figure out what the problem actually is. So even they might be stating this problem, there might be a deeper problem underneath, right? There's like a thorn in the paw. Even though you might see
mhm,
like this dog or this lion that might be angry, there's something else bothering them. They're not really trying to
mhm.
attack you. There's something else underneath. And so when I when people come to me with issues, I ask them because you know first and foremost, I don't like people, but so I just
I
want
know.
to solve problems, um, and I just want to be done with it so I can work on my own things. But I will start off for the sake of my time also and my sanity.
Mm.
I think this works well. I asked them, um, "Do you want me to help you solve this issue, or do you just need me to listen?" And then they think about it. The audience thinks about it, whoever I'm engaging with, and they actually think about it. I was like, oh, I actually don't have an issue. I need a vent. And I mean,
Mhm.
I'll kindly oblige. I will
Yeah.
listen, I will give advice, whatever. Because then they're if they're actually, even though they're coping and they're being overwhelmed and they're spewing all this out, they actually just want someone to listen. They don't need someone to fix their problem because you already know they're already gonna approach it the way they're gonna approach it anyhow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, getting into an argumentation, and I don't see arguments as bad. I actually just ask them very simply, if I propose um, a solution, all right, um, can you repeat what I just said? And then when they repeat it, oh, okay, yeah, that is what I meant, or that is what
Yeah.
I was thinking of. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I never assume that I know everything. But this is where, yeah, I think a lot of conflicts, um, it's amazing what can happen when you just listen, you hug someone, or you just stand shoulder to shoulder with them.
Yeah. There's I got two pieces to add on to that. When first meet a new client, I always love to well, it's part of my job as well,
Mm.
but I always love to explore like who's in their social network. And I'm talking about like social network
Uh,
platform is like who amongst like your family, your friends, if you're getting formal services, clubs, organizations, church, neighbors, and people even just living in your household, like who do you turn to for your support? And one of the questions I explore with the families is what types of support do they provide? And we classify as in four different types. So there's emotional support, which is exactly what you're talking about, right? This person will listen to you, validate your emotions, right? Just
mm,
let it you vent to them and give an ear to listen to.
yeah,
And then there's advice, which is fairly straightforward, right? This is
yeah.
like you giving their own input and specifically like, giving them more guidance on it.
Mm,
Then there's critical support, which is, think of like criticism, right?
mm,
There's negative criticism at the same time as constructive criticism. But then there's a fourth type of support, which is we call it concrete support, meaning like you do this for the other person.
yeah.
Whether it's like, um, you fixed your, I don't know, plumbing,
Yeah, yeah,
helped in
yeah, yeah,
transportation,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Help you out financially too, right?
yeah. Mm,
So, and the one thing that I think parents, since I speak with the parents mostly, that they realize is that, oh, this individual from this domain in my life, right, doesn't just serve one purpose, or they can at least serve a lot more.
mm, yeah,
So, um, so yeah, we can definitely all serve. We can all provide different types of support to each and every one,
yeah.
right?
Um,
But
yeah.
I like what you said about like asking them to repeat it back or like to make sure that they're listening. So there's one quote unquote technique for effective communication um called empathy, and it's a bit different than like exactly what empathy
Hmm.
the definition of empathy is.
Okay.
There's like thought empathy and feeling empathy. So it's like
Huh.
feeling empathy, you're verbalizing actually like hey, it seems like you're feeling very upset, distraught, it
Mm,
seems like you're very happy about this thing that you told me. And that really helps like kind of bridge that connection between the other person, the listener and the speaker, because it shows like, oh, you're really listening.
yeah.
And the other type, which is thought empathy, um, you basically just paraphrase what the other person has said to make sure that you're listening, which is again what you just described.
Hmm. Yeah. I'd never really studied it, but yeah, sure.
You got my academic side coming out now.
So that's a perfect transition, especially during COVID and post-COVID. What
Mm.
does the future of your field look like? Can
Me
AI
personally,
replace your
or
can AI replace your job? I don't know.
I would say I can never say never.
Hmm.
But I would say AI has a long way to go in terms of
Mm,
replacing my job.
yeah. Why is that?
Like because there is an innate sense of wanting human connection,
Mm,
right? Um, like I'm pretty sure you study like Maslow's hierarchy,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
There, there's one of the more foundational levels is like the sense of belonging,
Okay, yeah.
right? And that really comes with just being around other people. Like even introverts have to be around people, right?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Otherwise,
I know.
right? And as you saw, even with you know, telehealth, Zoom calls, Zoom meetings, Zoom
Mm,
classes, right?
yeah.
Learning, communication, it's not as effective unless you are really with the person,
Yeah.
right? And that's what my field really is about. It's like making that connection, right? Helping our clients, others, you know, find ways to seek change, right? And that I don't think something as inhuman as AI, no matter how well it could replicate, human voice,
Mm,
thought patterns, and things like that, it's a long way off. I mean, a long ways off.
mm.
Yeah.
Um, what what do you do when you encounter failure or setbacks? Like, what happens when you feel disappointed?
When I feel disappointed,
Yeah.
um, I think the first step that I do is to allow myself to feel the emotions that I am feeling.
Mm,
I think because I have tried immediately to rationalize things, right?
mm, yeah.
Um, and try to logic my way out of way. It
Mm,
can temporarily stop the issue,
yeah.
but continuously trying to bottle it up is a recipe for disaster. Um, so if I need to cry, I cry,
Mm,
right? If I feel angry, I'm just gonna go punch a hole in my pillow. I don't know, like go work out,
yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I always have to set myself on a timer,
Mm,
right? Because if I ruminate, if I continue to let my emotions fester rather than it just release itself,
yeah.
then I mean, one, it's not going to solve the issue,
Yeah.
right? And two, I'm just going to go in circles,
Yeah.
right? So, um, once I let myself feel these emotions, then I reset, being like, okay, what was the point of going through this,
Yeah.
right? What was the point of getting this experience, trying even attempting it in the first place. Um, and then once I have my bearings, I remind myself, okay, what did I gain?
Mm,
Right? Because just as there's no success without sacrifice, there's no failures without lessons.
mm,
Right? So, and I really asked myself, did this failure ruin my life?
mm,
Right? Like,
yeah.
is this gonna dismantle everything that I have accomplished? Is this going to invalidate all the goals that I'm working for?
Yeah.
Um, and 99.99% of the time, it's not. I mean, it
Yeah.
may, influence it in some shape or form because that's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
failures are supposed to do, right? But it's not gonna make me turn 180.
Yeah. 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 That's good that you've learned, and you have to reset every time, right? It's not like once you do it once, you're good for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, just having perspective and just recalibrating your perspective. And it's difficult because I tell students too, like there's perspective and then there's perception.
Mhm.
And perception is what we know of ourselves, right? And then we really can't factor in outside of ourselves what the values are actually objectively. Um, Now, someone who is considering going into psych or even
Mhm.
social work, what advice do you have for them?
Um, if you're only going into psych because you find it interesting, save yourself the trouble.
Hmm.
Don't do that. Because I have seen too many of my peers
Mm-hmm.
like start to go into psychology and some even graduate with a degree in psychology
Mm. Yeah.
only to realize like, man, I did not know what I was doing.
Hmm.
um and it sucks because I know a lot of people wanted to go into that. But I'm telling you, like, psychology is not just about you know mental disorders,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
whole that's it seems very doom and gloom, and people may want to jump into that because they were thinking like, I can fix the issues, I can fix people. Like no, sit down, right? Like psychology has tons of like research into it. Like you have to understand like not only to focus on the disorders, because not everyone has like a disorder that's so blaringly obvious, right? But you have to
Yeah.
understand how so many, systems interplay, right? Like
Yeah.
family, education, your own self-esteem, agency, friends,
There are
access to
layers.
resources. Yeah, there's so many layers where like if your motivation is so superficial as, oh, I am interested, right? Don't do that. If you are interested, cool.
Yeah.
Do more research into it. Like talk to someone that is in the field or majoring in it, right? And really find out for yourself if that's what you're in. And really ask for the downsides.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you can't weather through the downsides, you're not
Because
gonna survive.
when you're doing the work, you know, first and foremost, you are, I don't like the word business, but your business is people and their
Mhm,
welfare.
mhm.
And there are consequences.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, and you have to have the heart, the temperament, because what you're tasking to look through all those layers is just being super considerate. So if you can't be
Yeah.
considerate, and I that's where definitely I fail a lot, right? Just upbringing wise, whatever, whatnot, because I just here's a solution or let's power through this, right? But that's like kudos to you, man. You're definitely doing God's work in terms of you're more considerate than I could ever be, and that's what makes me proud, really. But then, you know, at the same time, when you're doing all this work with your heart, Sam, because you put yourself out there, you wear your heart on your sleeve, you give up your time, um, and finances, things are going to come back to you. I know, Sam. What are you doing to maintain balance? Right, as much as we say work hard, play hard, but like
Mhm.
um, what do you do to just find homeostasis?
Mm. Um, that's a really good question because I am almost at the mindset where balance is not really a thing.
Mm,
As in, like, I have to have this amount of work, this amount of like not sleep, because you do need sleep to
yeah,
function, but
yeah,
like
yeah,
play, right? Leisure.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
it's like, because life, what I've learned is that life is going to throw so many different variables as at you, right? It may be difficult for, those who aren't working, right, to
Mhm,
understand, but like making plans with, um, making plans with friends, it's hard.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because not only are you busy, but they're busy, and if you try to hang out with more than one person, right, it's
Mhm,
like
yep, yeah.
now you have to do that calculus, right? So I don't think it's about like just balancing like on a scale, but more like what you can fill in your time with,
Mm,
right? But the thing is like you have to ask yourself like, what do you fill your time in? What do you fill the time with? And it can't be things that are just for work, right? It's like understanding what do you need for that day,
yeah.
right? Um, and it sounds kind of counterintuitive because having routine is very important. Um, but at the same time, it's like you can't be too rigid with your routine,
Yeah.
right? So you have to prioritize things. That's what I'm looking for.
Mhm.
So,
What's a book that's influenced you?
what's a book that influenced me?
Yeah.
Is it a cop out to say the Bible?
Yeah, I think that's too easy, man.
um, I would say one book. I'm like boiling it down. So the first one that really comes to mind, I would say, is just because I have to give some context. Otherwise, I feel like I'm super immature. I feel like at this job, like it is very technical, it is very
Hmm.
data driven,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there has to be a lot of creativity behind it because I
Hmm.
think that is um if you have creativity, right, that opens your heart a lot to connect with others.
Yeah.
I think one book that helped that was very influential in that is actually The Phantom Tollbooth.
Hmm.
And it is generally, for like younger adolescents, but I remember when I did read it, I was like drawn into this world where it wasn't just like fantasy, but it made me very introspective of like, you know, what is going on inside my head, what is going inside other people's heads,
Mm.
right? And how would I bridge that gap in terms of,
Mm.
me wanting to connect with others?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, love that book.
Yeah.
And the other book I would say is a book I kind of recently read, like not too recent, a couple
Hmm.
years ago, but it's called 40 Ways to Stay Miserable.
40 ways to stay. All right. All right. Enlighten us.
So it's just by the title, you're like, what the heck is this book? But when you actually read it, it
Hmm.
lists out, habits and behaviors that a lot of people
Mm.
do, right? That keeps them in this state of sadness
Yeah.
and frustration.
Yeah.
Um, and it kind of just like I feel like I am a very introspective person, but even I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, this is a slap in the face, right? Um, and again, it comes like it helped me, take a look inside myself and be like, okay, I am doing all these things, yet I'm still
Hmm.
alive. I'm still kicking.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, it really at the time it helped reset, you know, me
Yeah. Yeah.
and where I was going. Because I think this was around the time um I just graduated too. And I was
Okay.
feeling all the frustrations of
Okay.
COVID,
Mm.
and not being
Yeah.
able to do the things I wanted to.
Well,
So yeah, I would say those two books.
yeah, I mean, I would say what those two books have in common too is just like they're just gaps. There's gaps in connections.
Hmm.
And we can't figure out why we can't close those gaps if we're not self-aware.
Hmm.
Like that there are things you could say that how about maybe we're just ignorant of. Ignorant not in a bad way. We just don't know or we're
Hmm.
not aware. But then once you become aware, um the question is will you will you make the attempt to grow? And that's the other thing is people seeing um one end of success or stability or comfort, but they don't want to improve.
Mm.
They don't understand the process of improving, and just putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like when I read the 40 Ways to Stay Miserable,
Yeah.
um, it was like, I will admit, there are some of the chapters where I just got defensive, be like, "Ah, that's not me,"
Mhm.
right? I think that's like the most like dangerous form of being defensive, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah.
it's not retaliating, being like, what? No, that's it's like, no, that's not me. It's like easily dismissing it because I think, not being able to take everything into consideration is the easiest way to one form of your own biases,
Yeah,
but also to not grow.
yeah, 100%. Uh, Now flipping that, how do you know you succeeded? How do you define success? What's a win for you?
What's a win for me? I think that is something I'm almost kind of grappling with.
Hmm.
Because I mean, success doesn't really mean much until you get to the end,
Mm.
right? Um, and you're, the good that you do, the good that I have done, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm not gonna see those fruits of it until like much later in life.
Mm.
So one of the things I'm still grappling with is like, when is it enough?
Mm. Yeah.
Right? Um, for
Yeah.
sure
So
there's
when do you give yourself a pat on the back, man?
when did I give myself a pat on the back? Um, when I realized that stress is no longer stress.
Mm,
So like me, like working with I just closed out one of my families where it was quite difficult. This family, um, the parents would constantly talk over each other, blame each other,
mm,
and two of the older girls, like they've both been to juvie for um getting very physical with their mom.
yeah.
Um, and just working, untangling the mess that it was. It was very stressful. I was spending long hours at the house, and I would go home being like, my God, what the heck did I just go through? You know? Um, but eventually it came to the point where like I didn't mind. I mean, I never minded going to the house, but like
Yeah.
I didn't have to worry too much about going to the house, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and I realized, oh, okay, I'm making good headway.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's what it is. I don't like the finality of success nor failures, really. I think that's one of the reasons why I like accept failure so much, so easily.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
because I understand like this is not final,
Mm,
right? Um, so it's just yeah, I was defined to me, success is becoming stronger in terms of like weathering through it, becoming more resilient, becoming smarter,
mm.
right? After going through an ordeal.
So tell me about the ethical implications of your work, man.
The ethical implications. One, I think the one that um not the one I had to like really struggle with so much, but one that I always have to keep in mind is that I am coming to these people with a wealth of knowledge that they do not have, and I have to utilize what I do know appropriately, not in terms like not only in terms of, not manipulating them
Yeah. Yeah.
or like making them molding them to my own desires and experiences, whether that's me personally, culturally, right? But also providing them with the information at an appropriate time as well.
Mm,
Because even though like, I may be speaking the truth, even though I may be speaking what is the best for them, right? And again, that's not necessarily up to me. Um, if I overload them with everything at once without like kind of guiding them, then it can go haywire and you can cause a lot more damage.
yeah.
Um, so I would say that is, the biggest ethical concern that I constantly have to remind myself with. And of course, with the nature of this job, there's a lot of other things like you can't use them to like further, a personal business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely can't do anything romantic
Yeah. Yeah.
or,
No.
sexualize with them. That's a
Yeah. Yeah.
huge no-no. Um, and even it even goes down to like you can't really be friends with them. And I
Yeah.
think that sucks because when you're working with clients, you have to build rapport
Yeah.
with them. Um, but there has to come a time where you have to let it go
Yeah.
and you can't just hold their hand anymore.
Mm. So how do you stay motivated with all your cases, everything that you've encountered? How do you stay motivated? How do you stay focused?
Hmm. I just do. I'm just kidding. Um, I think for me personally, I kind of have two answers for this one. Me personally, you mentioned that you and I both grew up with single parents,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? We're also only children,
Yeah. Yeah.
childs, I don't know,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Um, and for me, there was a period of time where it was a long period of time where a lot of times I actually stayed home by myself,
Yeah.
right? Um, and that really and being as gregarious as I
Mm,
am, even as a kid, I thrive just like, that left a gap where like I wanted to be around people so much, right?
mm,
So me wanting to fill that void in, and especially like me maturing, right? And feeling like, okay, I can be of use to the other people, you know, getting to work with all different families with all different types of walk of life. Um, it's just like intrinsically motivating. Um, Now, there's that, and then the motivation for me is the second part is I have to keep learning.
Yeah.
If I want to do what I want to do, I have to learn more. I have to practice more,
Mm,
and I have to succeed more,
yeah. Yeah.
right?
And doing nothing doesn't move the needle.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. No.
What's a misconception people have about you or your work or both?
Um, about me, I think when people see me, okay, when peers see me, like not like, in my personal life, I
Mm,
think people see me as this uh F boy who just likes to party, which I mean, they're not entirely wrong in terms of going out, having fun.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, and they think I'm absolutely crazy,
yeah.
but I'm very surface level about things until they talk to me one on one.
Yeah.
Um, and then me professionally, one misconception they have, I mean, it really comes down to what they see, right in front of them, right? They
Yeah.
see this Asian dude with glasses, right? Um, and a lot of times I I would say out of all my clients that I've, worked with,
Mm,
only three individuals were Asian.
hmm.
So me going to a Hispanic house, a black house, even a white family's house,
Yeah.
like they and some of them have even actually confessed this to me is like they just felt like they wouldn't understand. Or
Yeah.
they thought that I wouldn't
Yeah. Yeah.
understand,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and honestly, at this point, it's like, what can I do? Right? I can't change
Yeah.
my race about it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like I just have to prove them wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, yeah. So that's I guess the biggest misconception about me in my work. Now the work itself, I think a lot of people um misconstrue that psychology is all about therapy.
Mm,
It's not. Um, like there's a whole side of psychology where it's called IO psychology, industrial organizational psychology, where like you don't work as a therapist, you work in like stuff like HR. You
yeah.
understand like how you know a work organization functions, like how to best optimize it, how to ensure like how to optimize performance without having to, you know, cause additional stress,
Yeah.
right? Um, there's psychology even in the legal field, right? There's forensic psychology
Mm,
where you use the skill, the research and the testing all for the benefit of like, you know, making appearing in court,
yeah. Yeah.
and helping someone save their lives, you know, without therapy. Um, so I think what people misunderstand is that psychology is a vast, vast field, and it's not just about therapy.
How do you handle criticism, man?
I handle criticism. Um, well, my first step, I hold my tongue. At least I try to. Um, because if I hold my tongue, that means I don't automatically incite like
Yeah. Yeah.
defensiveness from the other person,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I try to model what I want to see in others.
Mm,
And then I have to really pay attention. It's like, is what they're saying actually true?
yeah.
Right? I ask myself a lot of questions actually. So that's the first question. The second question is like, are they saying this because they want to help me
Yeah. Yeah.
or because they want to put me down?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then, once I go through the whole gamut of questions, I ask them questions.
Mm,
I ask them to elaborate, right? Really go into depth, right? And if it seems like a real valid thing, and if they're coming from a good place, all right, cool. Maybe it is relevant. Maybe they're just not seeing the full picture. And ultimately, it is up to me on whether or not I accept the criticism or not,
mm, fair.
right?
That's fair.
So,
What's something new or an idea that excites you?
What's something new or an idea that excites me? I don't know. Almost everything kind of excites me. Um, yeah, because again, I'm very linear in what I want
Mm.
to do. That if someone else provides, you know, gives me like an opportunity to do something else, right? I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting, you know. Um, so yeah, a lot of things. I really don't have a good answer to
Oh,
that.
that's fair. That's fair. So, how do you approach learning something new?
How is pressure learning something new?
Yeah,
Hmm. Well,
because you're constantly learning. I know
I
you are.
am. I know.
But I mean, now it's just automatic. But if you
Yeah.
could articulate the process, what does it look like? Or think about, taking a GE course in undergrad, not in your field. Like
Hmm.
how do you approach a problem or whatever, or dealing with new people, just whatever's on your mind
Hmm.
about
Well,
approaching learning something new.
I would say for learning something new is I have to empty my cup in terms of like whatever I knew, whether I'm, you know, here right now or back when I was, first going to college, right? It's like have to, sorry, my dog. I had to, approach this new concept, this new theory with an open mind, right? Um, and it's like I just take all the information as like, what purpose will this serve me,
Yeah.
right? Um, because if it's just like trivia, I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll just throw it in my trivia side of the brain,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I'll,
yeah,
I'll
yeah.
bring it up during like I don't know game night. um, so it's all about like just prioritizing. Is it too say okay, you mentioned like a GE course, right? Is it to just get an A for this, right?
Yeah.
Is it to practice like note taking, right? Is it to understand? Is it to like serve a purpose where like I'm getting more information that I can bring up, relate to, ask questions with a client or a professor, or like to build relationships and things like that. So it's like everything that I do learn, I have to find a purpose for it. Otherwise,
Hmm.
it's just noise.
What's a question that you wish people would ask more often?
Hmm. I don't know. With this line of work, I wish people would stop asking questions, just listen. I'm just kidding.
That's fair. That's fair.
um, I think a question that people that I wish would ask me more often is what am I doing wrong?
Mm.
Um, and that's not, oh gosh, now that I think about it, it sounds almost egotistical.
No, but it's
Um,
like because everyone's usually asking what are they doing wrong?
yeah, yeah. So, by asking me that, like it's not that I always do, but like maybe like subconsciously, like almost have to put on the front of like I know, not that I know everything,
Mm.
but like I know I have to help you. And one of the things I actually did have to learn is learn how to say I don't know,
Mm.
but learn how to also not phrase it in a way that like I'm gonna be of no use because it's at least my job, right? At least what I have done,
Yeah.
like there can't be, it doesn't make sense to, like for me to say I don't know. So if I tell them or if people ask me like, what am I doing wrong? It's like, maybe I'm not doing this the right way, right? Maybe, maybe, I am making more assumptions rather than making more like, actually going into it,
Yeah.
right? And like actually articulating my whole thought process, right? So yeah, I would say that's the question.
What how how do you see your work impacting society in the future, especially for a long
Hmm.
term, especially for a long term?
I would say that my current work if I am able to help the families get back on the right track, because I always tell the parents too, it's like, hey, you've been parenting the way you have been for a decade, almost 2 decades, right? Like me being with you for like these, I don't know, like 3 months is not going to
Yeah.
drastically, radically change the way you've been
Yeah.
parenting,
Yeah.
right? But it's like just to put you in a different, more positive, more adaptive trajectory. Um, and the way that I see that my work is going to impact society in the future, that was a question, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, is to plant seeds of change,
Hmm.
right? Is to give these youth, give these parents a certain skill set that will aid them in their goals.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah.
Now, what's a personal dream or goal you're currently working towards?
Hmm. A dolphin submarine. No, I'm
Dude, I was no,
just
I was like, you can't say dolphin submarine. That's mine.
an
Okay.
orca submarine.
You
It's gonna be bigger.
you can't say the One Piece because that belongs to someone
No,
else.
that's my next answer.
All right.
Fine.
Your
To
own
be
personal, yeah, your own
to be
for
Hokage.
the next podcast, man. What the next interview? So what's your personal dream or goal that you're working towards?
My personal dream, um, honestly, to and this kind of circles back, is to actually go back to the Bay Area, and to bring my experience, knowledge, and skill set, um, to the same community that started me on my journey.
Mm,
Um, because I think I've seen a great amount of, I mean, I shouldn't even say that. I've seen a good amount of, what it's like,
yeah,
in areas where education isn't well supported
yeah,
or even advocated for, right? Um, and I'm seeing now, like I'm seeing here what is really important, right? What are the similarities between those who thrive here versus those who could survive in the Bay Area?
yeah.
And I feel like it's here I can provide a good perspective um, in terms of what is important in to a community where it's so homogenous,
Mm,
right? So driven by tech and wealth,
yeah,
um, and not enough about family in a lot of instances.
yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is my personal dream. I want to become the Hokage of the Bay Area.
All right. So we have four more questions. These are
Mm,
more existential.
mm,
Um,
love them.
and so we'll end on these. Define for us what is depression?
Depression is a state where it is not just sadness, but
Mm,
feeling empty, feeling held back from one's own self. Um, Now I could explain it to you clinically, but it is, even the clinical definition really just comes down um, to being dysfunctional, deviating from your, you know, what you have been,
mhm.
and just feeling defeated and hopeless. That is depression in a
What
nutshell.
what is love?
What is love? Love is feeling comforted, welcome, and cared for.
Mm,
Like you aren't alone. It is the key to not feeling alone.
mm. What is the meaning of life?
Of life It is to serve God and to praise his name.
What advice would you give to young people, especially teenagers in high school?
Um, give me a narrow it down for me.
Seniors.
Seniors down. Okay, seniors, don't do drugs. For seniors, I will say let go of your expectations
Mm,
of what your world will be. Be more open to other people's experiences. Um, be open to gaining new experiences without sacrificing your goals and your dreams. And that's very easily said than done.
hmm. Yeah.
But I think you'll find it a lot easier if you let go of your pride.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Wise words from Sam Lee. Sam, thank you so much for your time. And I'm pretty sure the audience and myself are looking for a follow-up. And we'll talk about more personal stories, provide more personal anecdotes. But this is a great introduction. Thank you, Sam.
for sure. Thank you for having me.